Lean production system history. We start the topic of lean operations or lean production systems from a bit of history. If you consider the company like Ford, Ford pioneered the use of assembly lines that we discussed in topic 4. Assembly lines are a very efficient way of organizing production, but they require high volume to drive down the costs. The advantage of assembly lines is that it requires standardized parts, and also assembly tasks have to be standardized. And that actually has a benefit because it reduces the variability and results in better quality and increased speed of production. Toyota is a company that grew in a different environment. Originally, they were manufacturers of looms, which are actually very precise machines. And then they were supplier of trucks to Japanese army during World War II. After the war, they were actually quite inspired by the Western industries, but they couldn't use the scale economies because they were in a much smaller market and they had very little cash and other resources. So they were actually forced to build a system that was much more frugal, and that's why they had this focus on zero waste. And they built gradually what we now call Toyota Production System or lean operations. This system, that is the focus of this topic, is still one of the most successful and hard to copy operating systems. So, in a nutshell, comparing Ford to Toyota, Ford was a system that was good for large scale, steady state production, whereas Toyota happened to be much better for dynamically changing conditions. So much it was because it was much more frugal, it was much easier to introduce new products, introduce improvements. In 1986, an interesting study was published that compared assembly plants of Toyota and General Motors, and the following numbers were published. So this column shows numbers for General Motors Framingham plant and this for Toyota Takaoka plant. And things like how much time does it take to produce a car in hours, what's the number of defects were compared, assembly space, square feet per car per year, inventories of parts on average. And notice that in all of those, Toyota was much better, some of them dramatically better. For example, the number of defects is much smaller, or the inventory of parts on average, it's 2 hours, whereas for GM it was 2 weeks, so much more inventory. This was the first study that documented the superiority of the Toyota production system. Since then, Western manufacturers, of course, improved, but Toyota has been a moving target and still enjoys a substantial competitive advantage today. The difference between GM and Toyota can be reduced to what we call non-value added activities or waste, right? Toyota was a very lean operation and was trying to reduce all kinds of waste, and through that, they achieved superior performance.